Mhm. There we go. All right. So once again, we're going to begin with the icebreaker. Then just going to take about 5 or 10 minutes, and we'll dive right into our hands-on experience together. Um, and then from there, we're going to go through the entire thing together, and then we're going to do a little bit of reflection on that. And then I'm going to share some reflections just from some of the reading responses that you have done so far. I have not had a chance to get through all of them, so if I miss you, I apologize. But I just wanted to touch a little bit on some of them so far. I do want to talk a little bit about time, just as a topic in general, because it comes up a lot in this course, and I think it's really important to reflect on that. And if we have time, I have a few TED Talks that I found that I think are really interesting and fun, and I will share them with you if we have that time at the end of our evening. There's also going to be a few changes in the Canvas shell, and I just wanted to let you know that I'm still learning and figuring them out myself because they are happening simultaneously at this moment. So that's a little bit of our agenda. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Are we? So, beginning. I'll just leave it here. So in our reading, this was a quote from the water rat, our friend the water rat. And I highlighted some in the purple, and I wanted to just ask you to think about this before we started. He says, about in boats or with boats, in or out of them, it doesn't matter. Nothing seems really to matter. That's the charm of it. Whether you get away or whether you don't, whether you arrive at your destination or whether you reach somewhere else, or whether you never get anywhere at all, you're always busy and you never do anything in particular. And when you've done it, there's always something else to do, and you can do it if you like, but you'd much better not. So my question to you to think about and share in the chat, or I'm going to ask a few of you maybe to share verbally when you're done, is what do you personally mess about with on your own? The rat really loves boats, and I thought about this myself. I really enjoy kayaking, and I have not had a chance to do it in a very long time, but I can imagine myself as a water rat in a boat, just meandering and messing about and not really going anywhere, but enjoying myself and having the time of my life. So I want to know from you, just some thinking about, is there anything particularly that you mess about with on your own as an adult? Is there a hobby or activity that you have, something that you relate to? What draws you to it? What moves you about it? Do you get enough time to do it? And if you don't have something like this, did you ever? Did you stop doing it? Why? So just take a few minutes. I'll set a timer so that you're paying attention. Just maybe 2 minutes to think about that. And like I said, you can type it in. You can type it in the chat, but I might read a few if nobody's feeling brave to share openly. And if not, then I'll read it. We have about 1 more minute. I'm just going to read, and feel free to read too. Stranger Things fan. All right, so that was our time. So does anybody want to share with a larger group? You can unmute yourself and just go for it if you're feeling comfortable. If not, I can start reading through. Anybody brave?
I can go. Like a lot of people, actually, I'm a bit of a hobby dabbler. Like I like to learn new things, but never actually dedicate. I'm not interested in mastering. I just want to learn the basics and know a little bit about it. But actually for my answer, I put 3D construction. Like I'm a block builder. I remember in college dorm stacking the salt shakers while we were sitting talking. Like things just go up. My husband just laughed because I still do it. And like it gives me blocks, we have games, I have blocks. After the game's done, I'm stacking. So block building is kind of my fun play.
I love that. I love blocks and building. As an adult, I didn't do that as a child. And I'm, wondering now, self-reflecting, if that was my own self-limiting STEM issue.
We had a bag of blocks that only came out in bad weather. And it was the biggest treat when it was a giant bag of blocks. And when that came out in bad weather, it was happy land.
Anybody else? I saw a lot of gardening, reading, macrame.
I'll go.
Go ahead. Yeah.
I am also like a chronic hobby starter and not like, I don't know, finisher's the right word, because I don't stick with anything. I have like an unbelievable amount of art supplies and creative supplies. Like it's a problem. I am currently teaching myself to make jewelry out of polymer clay, and sometimes I just sit and fiddle with polymer clay just for soothing.
Awesome. Yeah. Anyone else? See, bike riders, embroidery. Oh, I would love to try embroidery. I have a 4-year-old. That's not happening anytime soon, but I have goals, lofty goals for when she's big.
I have all the supplies for it if you need some.
I actually started embroidering with my 4-year-old. It's possible.
It's possible.
It's possible.
She
She sat on the couch and did it all by herself. So, yeah.
I should try.
I was actually having this conversation with some friends this week at school because we were talking about, over the summer break, are we going to engage in any of our hobbies? And we all kind of said that actually our hobby is going shopping for the supplies, but then not really getting to use them. So then you go shopping for new supplies and a new hobby. And I'd love to say my biggest hobby is shopping. That's how I mess about.
I'm definitely that way with stationery. My best friend is worse. Quite the collection.
For those that like, I used to do scrapbooking a lot when I was single, and then I got like this email that it's a little, I don't know what it comes, but like it's like $270. They send you a box, and then they're gonna have like 2 days of classes. like different brands. I don't know what it is gonna be, but I'm so excited about it.
Fun.
Yes.
All right. So thank you for sharing. And I think that it will save the chat. So if you want to browse through later on, I see singing and soccer, some physical activities, soapstone carving and scaling. Ooh. Simple designs, 3D designs, beading, acrylic painting. Yeah, all right. Thank you. So we're gonna just get started. Does everyone have their materials and supplies ready? Does anybody need a minute? If you do, let me know. I am gonna share again. And like I said, I have not played with Zoom and shared my screen in a while. So I'm gonna share again because I made a lovely PowerPoint to help us remember what all the steps are so that we don't get lost. Where are we? There we are. Oh, I lost him. Can you see the PowerPoint? Yes, okay. I cannot. Oh, that's because you're in front of it. See? I'm messing about with the screen. All right. So here we go. There we are. All right, so these are all of the materials and what we're starting with. So if you don't have any of this, you can jump in, but I think you're all ready. So I'm gonna go ahead and go in here. So I want you to take 30 seconds. We're not gonna share this part. I want you to keep it to yourself. Don't look it up, don't ask anyone, don't share. I'll set a timer for you. But take about 30 seconds just to make a list of all the properties you know about paper. There's a few here: paper smooth, foldable, lightweight, but just take about 30 seconds to think about the different properties of paper and write as much down as you can and go. All right, that was 30 seconds. So you can stop writing your list for now. And we're gonna go ahead and, did I skip? Nope, here we are. Okay. Get started on play. So I will set a timer for about 30 minutes and you're just gonna go ahead and enter the play. There's no required starting point. You don't need to enter the play through any particular phase, so it's totally up to you how you enter, what you choose to do. As it says, before you begin, check in with how you're feeling. Think about what's going on for you. When you look at the paper, do you feel inspired to dive right in? Or do you want to figure something out? Do you want to try to plan? Do you want to chat with each other for ideas, make sketches? It's kind of open. So if you would like to unmute and talk to each other, or if you want to mute everybody and not listen, you want to dive right in. It's totally open. This is your time. So it has been suggested to play music. So I don't know if that will be distracting for you or not, or if you want to talk with each other. I'm happy to follow your lead. Is there any preference? All right, I'm gonna hit the timer. Go. Go ahead and get started. And in about 30 minutes, I will check back in. There's a possibility card here just to give you some ideas, but take your time, think about it, feel it out, or dive right in. And I'm going to go ahead and play just a little background music, but if you want me to turn it off, if it's distracting, unmute and tell me, or if you want to start talking to each other or chatting in the chat with each other, you are welcome to. Can you hear that?
Song here, a road in memory. Strange as anything, reached you to it's all fear. Because we're gonna not decide it's right to go anyway. Yeah, you, the love, the melody, set the sun. Oh, you, the pride in every life, the shine upon your face, remember you. It's all you, that's the sound before the God, so clear. So clear. So good for you. So free, wrote your memory as faint as anything we etched into the walls. It's all for you, the pride of every line shined upon your face like a memory you erase. It's all for you. 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 You've been gone for me all the time. You've been knowing that you know about what you're so very don't take your time, let the rivers carry you in. On the way you can find me again. I'll be waiting till the stars fall out of the sky. So what's about me look to the sky? Situations, your messages never hit me like you mind. For that heart, for me, living a life behind. Travel, see the end of my feet. See them fall, see them pay, immediate and yawning. I didn't sound like carrying a moment, apologizing. Make a stone, make a hit, see the ball golden. Button them down, button them down. Button them down, button them down. Got the time, gotta button them down, 'cause I know you can't button them down. See, see. See me, see. See. Half empty, half full, cup runneth over. Arms aplenty, coffers full. We're starting over. Half empty, half full, cup runneth over. Arms plenty, coffers full. We're starting over. I write you a story, but it loses its thread. And all of my witnesses keep turning up dead. I paint you a picture of last year night. Back to Chicago, city of back to Chicago. I paint you a picture, but it never looks right. Cause I feel in the shadows, I'm like I send you a postcard, says Blast here now. Greetings from Chicago, see ya. Come back to Chicago, see ya. Back to Chicago.
Okay, it's been 30 minutes. So I'm gonna ask you to pause and take a look here. So we have some questions for you, and you can feel free to type your answers in the chat or just unmute and share your experiences. How's it going? How did you start? Are you still in the same place? What phase did you start in? Anything you're experiencing? Anybody want to just shout out and get going?
I can go. I sat here and I was, yeah, let's make a Father's gift. Father's Day gift. I made a Father's Day gift and I bought like this very neat stapler that doesn't need staples from the Japanese market. And it was so cool that you can attach. And then from there, I experimented just attaching. Yeah, so I started with would it be like you face the circle? No, not the circle, the square. And then probably going to the circle now. Line.
Thank you. Anybody else? And Allison, I'm sorry, I didn't see your chat message until just now.
It's okay. I was just kind of in a place where I wanted to know if I was going to like keep going or stop. And
Yeah.
I can go.
I
I
have
started
a,
with,
sorry,
Go ahead,
Erin,
Sam.
go ahead. I was just going to say, thanks, Erin. I have a connection with Angelica because I very much started in the circle phase. I was just exploring, playing with paper. And I think that's something that I don't give myself enough time for because paper is a language that I've always thought I knew pretty well. I give workshops to teachers on how to use paper as a language. And then I realized that I just don't give myself enough time to play and tinker. So I actually did something very similar to Angelica, where I was really interested about how we join different papers. And I started with a stapler, and I did not know that you can get a stapler without staples. I need to look into that because then I was upset about the aesthetics of the staples, and I'm very much an aesthetic person. And so then I was giving myself some coaching around this is, you don't have to be perfect. Let's let go of perfectionism. And I did look at using glue, but found that in some papers it worked and some it didn't, because I've got a real range of papers here, from recycled to tissue to crepe to construction to vellum to doilies, all sorts of different things. So I was just kind of making discoveries around joining papers and the weights and of papers and how it affects the structure today.
Nice. Thank you. Erin, you want to go?
I definitely came in with a plan. Like, even knowing this assignment, I was like, oh, like looking at it, getting ready for it, I was like, oh, let's try something 3D. That's something I haven't done a lot of. So I'll do that. Of course, I just said I love to go 3D. I don't think of myself as a fine motor person. So 3D gives me big, but also the fact that where the assignment was messing about not make something, let me be free to just make it badly and not judge myself on making it. It was about playing around and how could I make it versus what I made, if that makes sense. And so I stayed with my whole project the entire time. I made a kitty cat. And explored using different papers for different purposes in it. But while I was doing it, I came up with 4 or 5, 6 other things I want to do that I don't have time for. So like I'm kind of I started with the plan and then kind of definitely played around to make the plan work. And then also have future ideas of, like, I'm also in the triangle. I want to try this. I want to try this. I want to try this. So, but a kitty cat.
Thank you, kitty cat. Did you surprise yourself?
I mean, it actually, I mean, the fact that I actually get it to stand, I'm happy. It's, at least recognizable as a kitty cat, which for me is actually impressive. So, yeah, it was fun. I actually had more fun with it than I thought, because I'm not, again, I don't like art. So it was kind of fun that I had fun with it. But again, I looked at it as an engineering versus art, and that made all the difference in my approach.
Oh, Tanisha, I can see you have your hand raised.
I just wanted to know if I could go next.
Yeah, go ahead.
Let me lower my hand and let me put my video on.
Yeah. Hi.
Okay. So, yes. I had some scrap shapes from another project that I grabbed from my class. And once I asked if I can use scissors for cutting, I decided to get scissors that cut different shapes. And I started to explore with that. Now, I noticed that my colors were kind of muted or more like nature toned. And in the beginning, I was feeling, oh man, I don't have enough like bright colors. But once I started piecing them together, I decided to use the scissors to cut different shapes here. Here, I thought I was going to use the center part of the cut, and I decided to use the edge. And then I was very like particular about where I was putting these colors at. And the same thing with the staples. I went and grabbed glue instead because I didn't like how that looked. I really didn't like how the staples were showing through my art. But I decided to go with like more different shapes to create pictures in that way.
So you seem like you had a plan and then you maybe shifted.
No,
no,
I
no,
didn't. I was
you
just like,
didn't.
what am I doing with this
You
stuff?
didn't.
I was so confused. And then once I asked you if I could use scissors to cut, then that's when a plan started to come through of what
Got
I
it.
actually was trying to picture or do.
Got it. Right. Does anybody else want to share? Dina?
I had some newspaper, some Sunday Funny newspaper,
Uh-huh.
and I was looking at it and feeling it, and then I got really nostalgic about ripping and paper mache, and it brought me back to camp when I was a child, and I was like really just deep in like memory as I was playing with it and just
Mm.
feeling like, being a kid again and ripping the paper and gluing it onto the balloon or the round object or whatever. And so then I just wanted to like put it somewhere. So I kind of made like these paper tubes all stick together. And then I started thinking about flowers and I tried to give it like petals on the on the outsides. And then I put it down and it stood up. So then it became like a creature. And then I was such a kid in this whole process. Like I was just playing it with like a little creature. And then I looked at it and I said, this is how I feel at the end of the first week of camp. So I came full circle from childhood to my current reality. But it was fun. I had a lot of fun.
Good. All right. Our 5 minutes is up. So we are supposed to continue playing. So hold on just a second. Let me get to the next part. I have questions, so many questions. So now you're going to continue playing. Where'd you go? Sorry. Trying to see. That's where we were, and that's where we are. So you have 20 more minutes to continue playing. My question is, how are you feeling about time? Just, you can answer or not. I'm gonna go ahead and put the timer on for 20 minutes. But I can share, I think I can share, that some people feel like they have a lot of time and some people don't feel like they have enough time. So I'm curious, we have another 20 minutes to keep playing. How are you feeling? I did start the timer, by the way.
Oh, I was gonna say, when we first started, I thought like, oh my God, there's so much time. What am I gonna do in this time? And then when the pause came, I was like, wait a minute, what? I'm not done yet.
Mhm. All right, well, you have 20 more minutes. You can dig right back in. Anybody else have feelings about how much time or how little time or?
Yeah, I had the opposite. I was worried the whole time about having enough time. So like I kind of kept adding when I have time to do this. Oh, I have time to do this. I think 20 minutes could be fun to play again. I've already kind of started.
All right, go ahead. Don't let me stop you. All right. Well, I see some chats too. I'll take a look and then I'll get started back on the music. Is the music okay? You can yell at me if it's too loud or too bouncy. I'm going to read to myself and play some music. Wait, I turned it down.
Still I met you. We all the same. See the facts.
Mhm. So I paused the music because I also want to give you the chance to chat with each other too, if you want to. So I can leave it a little bit quiet if you want to, because some of you feel like you have 30 minutes and now you have another 20 and you're not sure what to do. So you can always talk to each other. This is an opportunity to connect if you want to. So I can leave it quiet so you can do that.
Okay, yeah, let's do that.
Yeah. Yeah. I love music, but we can also talk too, because you don't get the opportunity to in this class or in the online courses. So by all means, it's your space. Go for it.
I feel like if we were in person right now, we would all be like chatting.
Talking, looking at each other. That was one of my questions that I had. We're in our own spaces and we can kind of see each other, but how do you think it would be different if we were together looking at each other's work and processes evolve?
Yeah, I mean, I can also hear my kids, and my 10-month-old was screaming during part of it because he bonked his head. I could hear what was happening. He bonked his head. And so that was very disruptive to me. Like I was like, stop. I had to stop myself from getting up and going to check on him. But he's fine. He's with my parents.
I do say, I think I'd definitely be having more silliness with it, just like laughing at some of my disasters, and I think they're dead happening. I do have my husband sitting here next to me, and I've occasionally thrown the little, oh, look at this, or this didn't work, to him. So I'm kind of getting that, but it's different than if it's where I'll be like sharing each other's, because I really can't see what people are making as they're working.
Yeah, I can see a few, especially as people pick up, I can kind of see. Looking at faces too, and I saw some smiles and I saw some faces of questions and frustration and looking for tools and supplies.
The 3D people really inspired me to put some 3D art on my one-dimensional artwork.
Yeah, I haven't. It's funny, this is my third time teaching this class and I haven't actually done it.
Do it.
I know, I was tempted to. I might have to do it on my own and see what I come up with. I'm curious and I'm always inspired by the different things that come out. It's interesting to me that some of you are feeling like you're done and now you still have time, and it's almost like now some of you might be entering the circle phase too, if you came in with a plan, or if you finished and now you're kind of have some open-ended time. Let's see, I had some other questions too.
It's making me think about when children, one of the things I think we talk about a lot and notice a lot is the children who aren't done when it's time for a transition. But it was making me think about the children who are done before the transition and how both things can lead to different sort of dysregulation in them. And then, things sort of unfold after that. And so that it's sort of, I'm like reflecting on that of like, what would I be doing if I was a child right now? And I was like, I'm done. Like probably be trying to talk to my friend or go to the bathroom, like do all these things to not be doing it anymore.
Something else that maybe isn't, how would I say that appropriately? Something you're not supposed to.
It could be seen as disruptive to some eyes.
Yeah, time is always something that comes up in this course, both as having too much or not enough. The next cycle, you're going to hear a lot of, I didn't have enough time, or you're going to feel that a lot too, I think. That's what we hear a lot of. We hear a lot of there was too much time here and there was not enough time there. So it's always something I like to reflect on, because we're all in different unique situations. Sometimes we have a very set amount of time that we have to explore a certain topic. Sometimes we have a set amount of time to be in a very particular space. I know a lot of people have talked about having to share classroom space or yard space. And like you said, you have children that need more time to explore and do things, and then you have children that are done, that need something else to do or might need different materials. I mean, that's kind of where, you know, our observation skills come in, and we think about, you know, how does time fit in here and what can we do to help support those children in those different phases and those different parts of their process, right?
But I also think that like when you have time, you look for things to do. Like I thought, like, oh my goodness, 20 more minutes. But then I found like a different way to fold the paper. I mean, than I was doing, and it's interesting. And now I figured out that paper is very fragile, and yeah, we can't do all the things that our mind may be planning to do. And yeah, so I like when there's more time, and even children that decide to talk to others or poke each other, but there's always like something that they find out when they have extra time.
Mhm.
I was thinking about that too. So I felt that I was done, and then 20 more minutes, I'm like, okay, well, what else could I do? But I'm thinking that's more of an adult thought, that I could do something else. Or would a child just want to get up and do something else? Or you say, you know, we have 20 more minutes. Would they continue on?
Mhm.
Or when they're done as a child?
Mhm.
Depends on the child, for sure. Some children I have seen be able to do that, and some children are like, I'm done. I don't know what to do with myself or my body.
There's also always the question, like, tell me what you're doing, right? And then they're like, oh, I forgot that I have to do something else. And then maybe you can, yeah,
Mhm.
maybe the adult there has the not the response, that has like maybe you can you know, discover more things with the child.
That's maybe when we kind of enter the triangle phase where we're offering some questions for them and giving them some food for thought to maybe move in a different direction or expand where they were, right?
I'm actually thinking of the student that will question their artwork if they believe that their friend sitting next to them artwork is better than theirs.
Mhm.
And when the one person held up the 3D cat, I screamed at my husband, somebody just made a 3D cat out of paper. And I'm over here just like, oh my goodness, and my flat pictures. But
See,
I
I'm
just-
laughing because I'm the other kid normally, because my sister was a great drawer and I couldn't stay in the lines coloring. So I always judge my art. But again, I looked at this as playing, not art. And that's why, like, I played.
Right.
Mhm.
But like, yeah, I'm like, oh God, no. If you got your conceit up close, it is like there's tape, there's rips, but it was just
It's
about the play.
gorgeous on the screen, trust me, because I was so
not in person.
impressed.
Not in person.
But it did make me think about that child. And this school year, I did have a child that always compared themselves to the other students, no matter what level of work they were doing. That was even simple with just choice time or just messing about.
Mhm. Yeah, it's interesting to me to think about how we can support a child in that situation. Something that comes up also, one of the instructions was very clear not to have mark making materials, and some people feel very constrained by that. They really want those there. And so I wonder the difference in a classroom setting where you can maybe free flow from one space to another, where if you're done in a space, you migrate to something that you're more comfortable with. Or you might not stay in a space longer, or if you're in a space and you see other people creating things and it doesn't, you're feeling like Tanisha said, like there's a higher skill set there. If you walk away and you seek something else out that you're more comfortable with, I'm wondering, how can we support children in exploring things that don't feel as comfortable and where they feel inadequate in some ways.
Going back to what one of my classmates was saying about the child that quickly gets it done, I too also had those children, and it made me think about what they were ready to do next. And as I'm feeling myself winding down to the end of doing this, will I just be adding just because I still have time left? Or do I feel satisfied enough that my artwork or paper design or messing about is complete?
I was thinking about that exact thing. I was like, okay, I guess I could keep working on it. But then I looked at it and I was like, I really don't want to. Like, I feel really done with it. So then I just started ripping paper and putting it in an envelope, and then I started making paper airplanes.
We have about 5 minutes left. Oh, look, see, we went 2-dimensional there.
Another cat, but 2D. But this one played around with texture.
It kind of speaks a little bit to the idea of really giving that open-ended time in the circle phase, right? Where you might think that you have too much time, but then you end up discovering more things or figuring more things out and really continuing with the material. I'm wondering if that's an adult reaction where we're done and we're done. But maybe children have a different experience where if they're really in a circle phase and they haven't had the experience that we have with a material, do they have that I'm done feeling if they're exploring?
And I was thinking, like, if we were actually doing this in the group, I'm kind of on my second round now. I would probably get up and wander and check out what everybody else was doing. And there's value in that, both for me and for the person. I'd be going, oh, that's cool. How did you do? And again, depending on the level of work they're disturbing, we think of, that floating in and checking with each other, kind of like, oh, you're bothering them. But it's actually an important part of, and then sometimes you get that idea that then you want to go back and relaunch. So I think, like in person, that would be happening. I mean, if you're stuck for the moment, you'd wander and see what's available and kind of what you want to pick up. But, so.
And that's kind of entering into the triangle and the square phase, right? Where you're decompressing, you're talking with each other about what you've done. How'd you do that? What did you use? I want to try that. I'm going to go back and try that. Yeah, it speaks a little bit to what Tanisha was saying about the child that feels like they might be inadequate, but maybe if you're creating a space and helping them think through that and how to ask questions of their peers and learn from each other, it might encourage them to go back and try different skills and different techniques that they're seeing other people use.
I mean, it's just like a skill that you have to develop of being an observer, where it's like, at what point do you watch this unfold naturally as it will, and as these children interact with each other, and at what point do you notice like maybe this child is feeling like because like for me, like I have ADHD and I also hyper focus, and if somebody interrupts me when I'm hyper focusing, it's maddening. So it's like one of these things where it's like but I'm also the person who's going to wander. So it's that balance of really observing, like which in these interactions are these children all like together and gaining from each other, or is anybody like being disrupted in a way that's not like helping them? So it's like kind of, I think, just like a delicate balance of making sure everybody's kind of getting their needs met.
Mhm. And maybe figuring out which part of their process they're in so that you can know how to support them through that part of their process. And 2 more minutes. And if you're done
Have you got,
exploring,
oh, go ahead.
yeah, just real quick, if you're done exploring the paper, if you want to share some of the properties of paper in the chat, you can go ahead and do that. Just pop a few in there. And the chat should be included in the recording. So, Chalita?
Oh, I was thinking, I don't know if any of you have read or are familiar with Brene Brown. I think we've read her a little bit in the course, and I'm thinking about her book Atlas of the Heart and how she kind of dives into all of these emotions we have and she defines them. And I'm thinking about the comparison, like how we were talking about children comparing their work, and it makes me wonder how competitive the children might be who are comparing their work.
Mhm.
Like, do you know them to be competitive, or do you think that it's really like a self, like they're doubting their self? Because it's a mix between the two, I think. Anyways, it brings me to, that's what I was thinking about, so.
Mhm.
Piggybacking off of what Shalita said, super interesting because we actually talked about we had our interpretation art workshop where essentially like we try not to like compliment kids' artworks like using terminologies like, oh, it's beautiful, or like just like stuff like that with other kids, because then they get this perception like, oh, you're only complimenting that kid's artwork, but you're not saying it to me. So like, which I think it's kind of funny with the whole competition thing, because after they had shared that perspective, it made sense like how sometimes like kids, like the kid next to the other kid who you just complimented just kind of looks at you, but they weren't like outwardly like showing off their work and stuff like that. So I do feel a sense of like how kids could like kind of feel competitive even though it wasn't meant to be competitive. Yeah.
I really like that, what you said that. One of the things I always try to do is reflect back what the child is saying to me. So instead
Yeah.
of saying something like, oh, that's
Yeah.
really pretty, I just say,
It's
oh, that
so
you use the
hard
color
though.
orange. Cool.
Yeah, it's
You know?
so hard though, because like there are times where like some of my kids draw something and it's like it really does look beautiful, but then like after going to the workshop and then like saying something like that, it like puts things in the perspective like, oh, maybe like because that's just like kids do think that way, and I'm sure adults feel that way too, like, oh, if one of them gets a compliment, how come me next to them aren't getting the compliment, and we're doing kind of like the same thing. And it like kind of made me feel bad when I like catch myself complimenting one kid and then like the other. So I tried to like either do what you do, like kind of repeat what they say, or like compliment one and then like realize I just compliment them, and then try to compliment like everyone who's doing the same activity. Cause like if it's beautiful, I can't not say it's not beautiful, it can't help it. Cause like what they did is awesome and it's great. So like, yeah, I just think like competition between the kids like is something that is pretty real, even in like a preschool age setting.
I have used a skill that helps when I'm not pinpointing that child's artwork out, and I always go back to how we're all different and how we all are beautiful and how our differences connect and how it makes our classroom community look so wonderful. And so I like to bring it always back around to our differences, which make us special. And then I lift everyone's picture up, because if all of our pictures were the same, it wouldn't be that much fun.
I agree with you. Sorry. You wanna go ahead?
No, you go.
No, it's just that when I noticed also like there was, because it's cultural and it's in our society, right? Like the comparison, and also like the willing to win, and it feels good. But like when we started, like my children and I, we started like collaborating in projects and seeing like that everyone has their own gifts, and without that gift, the project wouldn't be able to happen. So I feel like that there is like a very minimum comparison, or trying like, like a one person like trying to win more attention than the other, because they know that they have a place in the group, and they all have something to help our group grow. So yeah.
When I was like very first starting my ECE education, one of the first articles we read was I believe called Acknowledgement versus Praise. And I've always just kept it like very in the forefront of my mind when talking to children, in anything. It has to do with their art, what they're wearing, what they're doing, just acknowledging or encouraging as opposed to praise. And it's really helped me be able to rethink what to say. So instead of saying their art is beautiful, even if I believe that it is, I will say, like, I saw you sitting there for 10 minutes working on that picture, and you were looking at it, you were looking at the paper so carefully. Please, tell me, how did you think to make this, or something, like asking them questions and just letting them talk about it and feel acknowledged without praise.
I'm just going to interject and say that we're in the pause and reflect section. Our 20 minutes is up. We've just kind of naturally flowed into that time. And the platform is open, and I'll read some of the chats in a little bit, but if anybody wants to add to this conversation, I'll pause. And in that pause, I'll say that it's reminding me a lot of the Living Mathematics article and the indigenous concepts that she talks about, the Inlok Ek, I wrote them down, reciprocity and Nepantla. The reciprocity specifically, I'm thinking about in a group setting where you're looking around. I think Erin was talking about, she'd be up walking around looking at what other people are doing. And I think looking at other people's techniques, other people's style, other people's approaches, I think creating a culture like Tanisha was talking about too, where you're valuing the different skill sets that each other has, and how seeing that from each other and learning that from each other is a gift, because we each have our own skill sets that we bring to the table, and sharing that makes us a beautiful community, right? And thinking about it too, we're looking at it very much in terms of an art activity, but I think that we end up kind of in this competitive mindset when it comes to STEM topics too, because STEM has right and wrong answers traditionally, right? And so if we don't come up with a right answer, then there's that feeling of, I don't know what I'm doing. And I think that's just something I'm reflecting on right now and thinking about, because it comes up a lot in STEM. So thinking about creating that culture where we're learning from each other and learning gifts from each other kind of breaks down that competitiveness and allows us to see each other for who we are, see each other for our gifts, and meet each other and bring those gifts together, right? Yeah. There's some messages, so I can go through and
Talking about that actually makes me think about the times that people say, I can't do it, and how much that's immediate reaction for kids, and like, giving the encouragement to try. I had a little girl, like our morning question was just draw a picture today, the assignment was draw a picture, and she wanted a dragon, but it's like, I don't know how to draw a dragon. And it was like, well, give it a try. I said, and I actually said, remember, you couldn't go upside on the monkey bars, you kept practicing and now you can. And so it's that same idea of encouraging them to see the growth in other ways to help encourage them. And I think that happens, you know, in STEM too. Like they think, I'm not a scientist, I can't do this, or I don't know how to make a plant grow. And it's like, well, don't get me, I don't even know the answer. Tell me. It's that same, you have great ideas. Let's see if you can figure it out. You don't have to be right. It's such a hard concept for kids sometimes, especially I think in high pressure. I work with academic children, like their parents are all academics. And so that sense of you have to be right, I think in some of the kids is really strong.
Yeah, I totally agree, Erin, because I actually have a little girl who, when we do like large groups and we just like have like we task them to draw a picture or something, she's always inclined to be like, oh, I don't know how to do it. And I was curious about that for a while. And then after the conversation we just had about like being competitive, like I was wondering if it's like kind of if she's looking around and seeing how other friends are drawing or doing whatever, and then she's starting to compare, like internally compare it to what she thinks she can do. And she just results into saying like she'd rather just not do it than kind of do her own thing. I don't know if that makes sense. So I can kind of see where it come from.
There's some messages I'll read. Brianna said this time she started ripping up a bunch of pieces of paper and then taped it together with packing tape. She taped it up so it's almost like a laminated look, but when she was doing it, she realized it looked like the shape of a trapezoid without trying. She started to get sad because it wasn't perfect and she wasn't liking the way it looked. So she soon realized that she was exploring. I don't have to make it perfect or even like it. She's just exploring. The more she explores, the more ideas she has. She can test her theories. She can learn what she likes and doesn't like. Exploration is about simply exploring. It's not about achieving a goal, and you don't have to be perfect or even like what you're doing. And I think it's important, like we're talking about, you know, setting up that culture in your classroom so that children know that it's okay to explore and that they know that it doesn't have to be perfect, right? And it's all about communicating and making sure that they have that understanding in that space to have that exploration, right? Celia said she had a similar experience. As she approached the end of her time, she felt like she put pressure on herself to wrap up her work into a nice, neat package and reach some sort of conclusion, an urge to create a product. Well, wait for next cycle, the design thinking product time. That will be a fun experiment. Looks nice for a final presentation, which felt distracting from the essence of my experience playing around and what I found valuable about my exploration. A growth mindset, I can't yet. That was from Allison. Dion also felt that she had to come to an ending point with what she was working on. She finished what she was making, but definitely had some alterations to her envisioned design, but still felt the time constraint. Time is so elusive, right? We had so much of it, and then we had so little of it towards the end, right? It kind of plays with our minds a little bit. Lindsay said she loved seeing what other people were doing and how it impacted her own decisions in her work. Really speaks to the social nature of learning. It would be even more evident in person, definitely. I also wonder how we may have ended up working together and collaborating on pieces. I've been wondering that too. Right. Erin said she feels in this class more of us are talking than other classes, herself included, wondering if the openness of messing around makes her feel less judged, sharing. Yeah, I can see that. Initially used layered paper to make a landscape animals and didn't start with that in mind. This is Chalita. She was inspired by a seed pod sitting next to the paper. Then she was inspired by everyone's 3D projects and wondered if she could do that. She saw Coffee Filter, my paper box, and thought was what would happen if she glued paper petals all around the coffee filter and rolled it up. She felt finished after 30 minutes, but was able to keep exploring. Yeah. Yeah. Do you feel like you're talking more here than you do in other classes? Is that what Erin was saying? I think that's what Erin was saying. I think she's talking. Yeah.
Yes. I think everyone is talking way more.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I definitely, yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I get distracted. We had a stray cat literally walk in our front door.
Surprise.
This is actually why I made a cat. We've been having cats showing up on our door. So sorry, I'm
Felt the
distracted.
exploration and wanted to join. Yeah, I mean, we can keep talking. I can talk some too, but I'm very open. I don't want to close it off to you if you have more thoughts. But there was some points that I did want to bring up in some of your reflections in the responses. So does anybody have anything else they wanted to share about their experience or their thoughts?
I just wanted to add that I was, watching some of the other, examples, and I was thinking about some of my pre-K classes this year and how in some of the classes there was definitely a child who was like an expert in something. Like there was a little girl in one of our pre-K classes who was just an unbelievable artist. And there was a little boy in another class who knew everything there is to know about airplanes and could draw an entire airport filled with every little detail of every plane and knew every plane from looking up at the sky. And over the course of the year, because the teachers built this environment of collaboration, the kids would go to them, like they would seek their advice, could you draw this for me? Can you help me figure out what to draw? And I was thinking about that when I saw Erin's cat. Like I would walk over to Erin and say, can you help me make a 3D model of something? Because that's something I would never even think of, So it's like when you can build that collaborative environment where the children seek each other as like experts in things, it's pretty amazing when that happens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's beautiful. Anyone else? Just checking, make sure nobody has their hand raised. Okay. So I'll keep going with what I have, and like I said, I don't like being in charge of talking. So if you have something to say, unmute, raise your hand, do what you feel comfortable and pop in. And it's very much a dialogue. And I think it's great that you're comfortable talking. So I don't want to interrupt that at all. This is your time. So I'll talk, but please feel free to interject and pop in as you feel. One of the things that I notice comes up a lot, and somebody asked that they needed feedback for, was whether they were right about whether it was circle versus triangle versus square. And it's kind of more an intuition and a feeling than whether you have it right or not. I mean, we can discuss back and forth if this is a circle phase or a triangle phase, but it's really more about recognizing kind of where the children are at in their process, and like we've been discussing, figuring out kind of where they're at, if they need kind of some prompting with some questions, or if they're asking for information. There's not a correct answer or order or way. And it's really about kind of your intuition and your interpretation of where they're at and what they need. And this is just one process, one cycle. As you'll see, we're going to go through 2 other cycles during this course. And so there's a lot of different ways that you can approach a material, a topic, anything, based upon the children that you have in your group, the time that you have, the materials that you have, the access to space that you have. That was one thing that I noticed looking around, is that some of you are at desks, some of you are in your bedrooms, some of you are in dining rooms, some of you are not in school, so you maybe have limited materials available, limited space available. I saw somebody was in their car. I applaud you for doing this activity in your car. That is a very limited amount of space. But I think that's an important thing to kind of note when you're thinking about this, like what are your constraints? What are your materials and accessibility? What do you have that can kind of help you decide, how to move forward, and how to use this cycle as a tool, because that's what it is. It's a tool for you. So I wouldn't feel too caught up in whether it's triangle, whether it's square, but use your intuition and think about how you can use this tool in the classroom for you and when it makes sense and when it doesn't, because sometimes it won't. Sometimes you'll want to use a different cycle, and we'll be figuring out a few more of those as we move forward. So let's see, where am I? And we've been having a conversation about time and how elusive it is. I usually do a whole video on this towards the end because it becomes such a theme of the course, and even in the next few cycles, it's going to come up again. You'll feel like you have too much or not enough. Design thinking can be a very big thought process for some people. It's tricky. So I would encourage you to keep thinking about time, how you use your time, how much time you have, how much time you don't have, and how that works for you in the classroom. I'm going to stop sharing for a minute. Hi, there you all are, right in front of me. Okay. So there were a couple of things that I pulled out from some of your responses that I just kind of wanted to speak to a little bit. Some of them were from last week, some of them are from this week. And I haven't read through everyone's, so I may do an update later just to touch on a few points if there's anything that stands out. But last week, somebody said something that really stood out to me and I've been reflecting a lot on, and it tied in a lot with some of your reflections from this week. Somebody said something about what we should know. And that really stuck with me. And it got me thinking about who decides what we should know. Who makes that decision? And how does that shape the questions that we end up asking the children in our classroom, or the ones that children ask each other? Who makes that decision about what we're supposed to know? And then consequently, who gets to wonder or create those questions or decide what they want to know? And for me, it was a question of, when we talk about gatekeeping science and STEM topics, are we gatekeeping wonder as well? We've been kind of talking back and forth about children feeling like they don't have the right answer or the right skills, and kind of feeling like they're stuck and not moving forward. Are we kind of in this point where their sense of wonder is kind of blocked in that sense? And how can we open that back up for them and give them that opportunity to reopen that up? These were questions that have been rolling around in my head. I don't have answers, but they're questions that I have as we're looking at this cycle and looking at the work and reflecting with each other. Another thing that stood out for me that I read today that I'm still rolling around is somebody mentioned that they were having a hard time with this cycle because it was another white male voice. And I was like, yes, it is. It is. And, I think the hard part about that is that with STEM topics, unfortunately, there are just a lot of white male voices because that's who's had that space and held that space for a really long time. I don't think it negates the value of his work or the cycle itself, but it made me think back a lot to the Living Mathematics article. And as I was mentioning before, those ideas of Inlock-Eck, reciprocity, and Nepantla, and really thinking about Inlock-Eck specifically, that mirror in front of us, and Nepantla, specifically thinking about a border space where his white male voice is here, but our voices are here too, and our experience is here too, and other voices and experience are there too. And so bringing it together as a mirror and looking at each other and seeing how both this voice and other voices combined with it can elevate our knowledge and expand our knowledge and bring it to another place. And reciprocity, he has a gift with these phases and this cycle. And what gifts can we bring to it? What understanding can we bring to it? And how can we use this to give the gift of time, or the gift of community and culture of reciprocity to the children, right? How can we use this knowledge and this voice to elevate and expand and give voice to other voices as well, right? So I'm thinking about them together and not just isolated, where in the past, traditionally, it's been isolated and other voices have been silenced, right? I think about the same thing with the comparisons for the maker movement. With the video last week, We Are All Makers, in comparison with Vasogi's article, Making Through the Lens of Culture and Power. That comparison too, thinking about where that gatekeeping is and how there's value in this mindset that we're all makers, but also thinking about who has access to materials, who has access to information, who has access to those spaces, and how we can shift how we open that up to everybody. And just a shameless plug for the science nuggets. One thing that the two videos that I like to use just as a supplement for this is, I don't know if anybody's heard of him, but his name is Mark Rober. He's an engineer, and during COVID, he created a video called The Squirrel Maze. And I'm going to share it, and you can, yeah, I see somebody nodding their head. It's a super fun video. I'm not going to lie. It's fun to watch. He has two of them. There's 2.0, the Walnut Heist. It's super fun to watch. And then alternatively, I share the video on Kane's Arcade, which I'm sure some of you are familiar with as well. But the two compared to each other are such an interesting kind of example of what we've listened to and read with the maker movement and Making Through the Lens of Culture and Power, in where Mark Rober is a white male with an engineering degree and tools and materials and knowledge and a backyard to be able to do all of this, who ended up turning it into a career. He makes maker boxes now and teaches classes for a fee. Whereas with Kane's Arcade, Kane is this young boy who created a full arcade out of cardboard boxes. You know, he basically took materials like we did, but with cardboard boxes, and created a whole arcade in his dad's garage. And a documentary filmmaker came in and documented it and got a ton of people to come and participate. But that movement created a global cardboard challenge that opened up engineering concepts to everybody and anybody and didn't limit them to materials. So it's an interesting comparison where there's value in both, but how can we use them as a mirror to reflect access, understanding, materials, etc. So I'll share those links if any of you haven't seen them. It's interesting to kind of watch it again after having that lens and thinking about that in terms of what we offer. Somebody else said they shied away from STEM because they didn't feel qualified to teach something they don't understand themselves. Hi. Me too. There's definitely, I think, a natural feeling of imposter syndrome sometimes. And I think that so much of the work we do is inspiring wonder and curiosity and opening that up, that I want to remind you that you don't have to know STEM to encourage and help develop a sense of curiosity and wonder for somebody to be interested in STEM topics. I think a lot of us have been through experiences similar to Alex, where we've kind of been made to think that STEM isn't our thing, or that it's not accessible to us. But I'm hoping that through this course and through these experiences and readings, you'll see that STEM is happening with you and through you daily in various ways. and previous ways of learning and understanding and being with STEM are not the only ways. And that it's less about knowing and understanding it, but more about having that curiosity and that wonder and helping others have that curiosity and that wonder and developing that and finding out together. We don't have to know all the answers, but having that ability to be curious and look for answers is really the starting point, right? Let's see. I think we kind of covered all of the other topics that I had noted here. Somebody else said fashionable buzzwords from Papert and highlighted that. And I think that's an important thing to think about too, because as we move forward, there's going to be a lot of buzzwords that come up for us. And so learning these cycles and learning ways of helping children cycle through and explore different topics and processes help us understand children's cycles and their learning processes, and will help us evaluate new buzzwords, new processes, new things that come up, and see how they fit in and how they make sense and maybe how they don't, and how we can argue in favor or against something that doesn't make any sense. And doing it through the lens of STEM, through these cycles, and understanding like, actually, that's not going to work so much, but this is going to work better. Or I like this part of this new process or buzzword, but these other parts don't really make sense. It's going to help us kind of evaluate those as they come through. So I wanted to just highlight that. Anybody have anything else they want to reflect on or talk about? Any questions? We're quiet, we're tired now. We're getting close to the end. So I found some really fun TED Talks. That's kind of my jam. I like finding those. Where'd you go? There you are. I'm going to share my screen. Again, forget how long each of these are. So we can watch these together. You can stay with me and join me in watching one. Or if you're tired and you have somewhere to go or be and you want to rest, you can do that too. But I wanted to find something that related to paper. And so I found these two really amazing TED Talks. I believe one of them might take us a little bit over time, but I think they'll both be kind of relatively close. One of them is beautiful and is art forward, and the other one is very science forward, but both of them are paper leaning. So option A is very science forward and option B is very art forward. So I don't know how to work the poll, so in the chat let me know if you have any particular feelings towards A or B, and I will click and we can watch together.
Sorry, Sidra. I just have a question.
Sure.
So do we, after we've done this activity, do we still have to submit a reflection on the hands-on experience in Canva?
Yes.
Okay, so we just...
So what I would do is take a picture of what you've created, and you can either do a brief video on your reflection and experience, or you can do a quick PowerPoint, but just a write-up to submit your documentation in. And then I don't have it in front of me. There's one other piece to it. My brain is blanking. But yes. Yes.
Okay, and in the documented artifacts that you want us to submit as well, the documented experience, it says compare the frameworks, but we won't be comparing frameworks in the first one, right?
It's just comparing this framework to an experience that you had. So it's not comparing the other cycles with it. It's just, yeah, it's looking at this Can you see the screen? Where are we? Am I in the right cycle? Yeah. Okay. So if you have a documentation or you're working with children now, then you would examine that through this particular cycle. So you would look at documentation or an experience and try and identify the circle, triangle, or square phases through that.
Okay.
Does that make
Okay.
sense? Yeah.
Yeah. And that
And-
would be for each and every cycle, right? Like, so for if we do design thinking, then we will be looking into a design thinking documentation for that of an experience with design thinking.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you so
And
much.
Thank you for reminding me along that note. In that documentation, if you're looking at a piece of documentation or an experience and you don't see one of the phases, that's totally fine. Just address it and acknowledge it. Ask why you don't see it there, why not. Just acknowledge that it's not there and maybe speak to that a little bit. So you might not see all three phases in one experience or one documentation piece, but just speak to that a little bit. Does that make sense? Okay. Let me see if I missed anything else. I think that's it. All right. We're at 6:20, so what I can do instead, so that we can have a Friday night, is we can, if there's any other comments or questions or anything else, I'm open to it. I'm here for another 10 minutes, but I'll share these links in the Science Nuggets. They're beautiful. Take a look. But we can skip it. It's Friday night. We can have a Friday. Are there any other? I'll stop sharing too. Hold on just a second. All right. Any other questions or comments or reflections?
This is our only Zoom, right?
Yeah. So I will not do a recording this week because I kind of gave you a little feedback. I might do an announcement if I have any other reflections on any of the responses that I've read. Again, this is recorded, so where's my recording button? Interesting. Oh, there it is. This is recorded, so you can come back and look at it again. But I won't be doing a video this week, but I will be doing a video every other week, reflecting on that. Another thing is I didn't get to group you for this week's discussion. Next week, I'm going to try and group you so you have a smaller group, so you're having a much kind of smaller, more concentrated conversation. I'm going to pair you up for your peer reviews. If not tonight, then probably tomorrow morning. So you should be prepared to do that as well. And there are some changes that are going to be coming to the Canvas shell because I think some students were having a difficult time kind of navigating it. So expect those changes, and Alex is going to make an announcement kind of outlining what those changes are. And if you have any questions, go ahead and shoot us both an email and we can help you kind of navigate that. Next week, you're going to be doing reflection on this and the documentation piece and the peer review with each other. And that's the end of that first cycle. And that's kind of the rhythm that you'll get for each other consecutive cycle. And then we'll have one more final reflection week in the last week in week 8. Okay. All right. I will stop recording. And again, if you have any questions, just go ahead and email me. I thank you all for your time and your conversation, whether it was in the chat or in person talking. That was a wonderful class. I enjoyed listening to you and talking with you all. Yeah, of course. All right. Have a good Friday night, guys. Take care.